I am going to be making some convenience meals or meals in a jar or whatever you want to call them. This is kind of new for me. I have done a couple of meals in a jar type meals, like I do baked beans. I don't really consider salsa to be a meal in a jar, but it is something you can eat from the jar. And I've also made meatballs and meat pie filling. I mean, that's really it. So I wanted to expand what I am working on, and this is my chance. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me today, fellow canners, and I hope that you get something out of this video because this is kind of a new thing for me. I am an ingredient canner, so if you are also an ingredient canner, this might be right up your alley. If you are a convenience canner and you like to just have meals in jars, maybe you've already done this. Let me know what I'm doing wrong, or let me know your favorite recipes. Today I am going to be doing chicken chili verde. I have always wanted to try this one. I have seen it all over the place several times. Every time I see it, I'm like, I have to try that. I have to try that because it is right up our alley. This is so much, the recipe is so similar to the enchilada casserole that we make that I am positive we will like this. So this is a really good first recipe to try. Now, part of my game plan for this video series, there's going to be a series of recipes that I'm going to try, is I want to show you the recipe from start to finish. Literally, ingredients all the way up to served on a plate or bowl or however it needs to be eaten, so that you can see how it's also used. Now there's multiple ways to use some of these meals in a jar. I mean, baked beans are kinda, you can have that as a side dish for a whole bunch of things. But some of them are, like, baked beans is kind of a uni-tasker. These ones I'm hoping I can find different ways to use them, that it's not just, oh, dump it out and eat it as is. So this chicken chili verde, I am hoping that it will be a good filling if I wanted to make up a really fast enchilada casserole. I am also hoping that it says to just serve it over rice. So maybe I can make it into like a burrito bowl or something. So there's a few ideas that I've got for this, and I've had them for a long time, so I'm really looking forward to doing this. I need to get some onions chopped up. I have already chopped up my jalapeno and cilantro that it calls for. I have some of the roasted salsa, the salsa verde. It is the same recipe I actually made last year. I will try to find the link for that, so you guys, if you don't have that already, can just whip up a batch. You can, I think you could probably substitute in the green tomato salsa verde recipe if you don't have access to tomatillos. So that is an option. Now, this calls for green onions. I don't have green onions. I'm just going to use yellow onions. It calls for ½ a cup per jar, so I need to get chopping. I will probably speed through the chopping part because I'm sure a lot of people know how to chop an onion. I'm going for a relatively fine dice just because not everyone wants a big huge chunk of onion, and I don't know if you've had canned onions, but they do break down and get really soft, so this is also a way to hide some of that softness. The last ingredient, well, it does call for sliced cloves of garlic. I will probably dice that up just to make it a little finer. I don't know what they mean by sliced. Like, they want like chunks of, who wants a chunk of garlic? So anyways, I will be prepping all this up, and then I will show you how to load it in the jars. Most meals in a jar, you can do them in quarts, but there's a few recipes that were actually in pints. So some of them, for the most part, I think the ones that sounded really good that I thought everyone would like, I will be doing in quarts. But if you are sort of a smaller family, single person, you know, pints might be the way to go. So for this particular recipe, I will be doing it in quarts, which also means it is going to take an hour and a half in the pressure canner. These are all pressure canner recipes. I feel like some of these recipes, if you prepare them and you just don't want to do the pressure canning and all that, it would probably do a good freezer meal. So that is also an option if you are not into pressure canning, but you're into meal prep. I think this would probably do very well in the freezer, but I would suggest obviously cooking the chicken and the onions first. Everything else I think could be just thrown in and heated up as you cook it when you're thawing it. Okay, I think I have 2 cups of onions. I need 2 cups. That's pretty darn close. Might cut up another little one, and then I will go track down some garlic. I actually bought fresh garlic to do this. So we will see. not a fan of cutting up garlic, but I don't have a garlic press either. So I went out into the garden and I harvested some of those mini jalapenos that I have been growing out there. I think that the plant does not like being in a pot so much. It is productive, but it's not super productive. And I have seen what a productive jalapeno can be like. I actually got a plant from somebody that they had had in their garden all summer, and I'm like, I am going to overwinter that and it is going to be the bomb in the spring. Nope, it bombed, literally. So, but it was a huge plant, so productive, and I can't come close to that, unfortunately. So, but I was able to get enough jalapenos for this recipe. I hope I don't need any more for any of the other recipes, or I'm kind of screwed. Okay, so that's that. Let me go track down some garlic. Okay, so it looks like it is 1 clove of garlic per jar. Okay, I think I have everything ready. So we are going to get these jars filled. I am going to start with the salt. I'm put 1 teaspoon of salt. Now I'll make sure to find a link for this recipe below if I can. I'm pretty sure I've seen it online a few places, so try to find it. But a teaspoon of salt. This is pickling or canning salt, so it won't go cloudy. And I need a clove of garlic per jar. That ought to be fun. Actually, we'll do the garlic last. I need 2 tablespoons of cilantro. So this was actually from my Aerogarden, so that was fun. Hope I got enough because I'm not running back down for any more. And then I need 2 tablespoons of, now I called for pickled jalapenos. I don't have pickled jalapenos, so we're going with fresh. Calls for 2 of that. Might need to do those scant as well. Now let's get the garlic in. Then I can get this cutting board out of the way. I hope you didn't miss everything. Okay, now next I would like to put in the chicken because then I can wash my hands and then get everything else in. So it calls for a pound of chicken, which I've got 4 here, but I don't know how many chunks that's going to be, so I think it's approximately 7 chunks. Alright, well, best I could. This one doesn't seem to have quite as much as some of these other ones. Alright, 1 pound of chicken. And I need half a cup of the salsa verde and half a cup of the beans. I might do the beans first because I can just reuse the spoon in the other one. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but these beans do actually have stuff in them. They have a bit of onion flake, dried onion flake, and a little bit of cumin, as well as some chilies. So it does have a little bit of flavoring in it. It was supposed to be like a charo type bean, but use what you have. I think this actually calls for a white bean. We don't have many white beans. I am just going with pinto because we use pinto for just about everything. I mean, I can get pinto beans super cheap here. I am making a mess. Feel free to use your canning funnel so you don't make a big mess like I am. Now, my only concern with this recipe is I do wonder how much texture doubly canned beans are going to have. That would be a concern. I'm sure the chicken will be fine. The onions will probably break down. So will some of the other things. But the beans, like, I don't want the beans to break down too much. But okay, that is that. I'm going to try to give this a shake earlier, so hopefully it's flowing. So if you're using a pint jar, you have to make them a scant half cup, otherwise you will run out. Okay, there's that. Put the onions in. Calls for, oh, you know, I might have to rinse that cup. Calls for a half cup onion per jar. Okay, well, obviously I cut a little too much. That's okay. Okay, I have something to wipe the rims, and I need to get the broth. Okay, so I have the stock in the canning pot, so it's pretty much the same temperature as everything else. I hope. Oh, it feels pretty hot. There you go. Then, ooh, oh, it smells so good. Okay, let's get these topped off. I might use the funnel for this because it's probably going to be messy. Ooh, hot! Definitely need a debubbler for this. You can see it pouring all the way down to the bottom there. Alright. Use that to hold down. No, that's going to be slippery. Okay, just try to not burn ourselves. Okay, I need an inch of headspace. So pressure canning is always an inch. So that is to the bottom of the shoulder here, or the ring. Okay, that is full. So let's get this wiped and in the canner so it can sort of stay warm. I got stuff on the bottom. Oh my gosh, what a mess. Okay, there we go. Get the lid. Lather, rinse, repeat. Oh yeah, that's an old lid. I haven't seen that cover in a long time. Okay. I am wiping the stuff off the bottom because I don't want to foul up the water in the canner too badly. Okay, there we go. So that will need 90 minutes. And I will show you how it looks when it's done and how to cook it up. Okay, I am going to take the chicken salsa verde and I am going to make an enchilada casserole with it. This one had a very weak seal, and so I have had it in the fridge for the last little bit. But it is perfectly fine because I saw it had a weak seal and I kept it in the fridge. So I'm going to put down just a little bit on the bottom. I don't want too many of the bean chunks, but some of the other chunks are okay. So I'm just going to get that down. That just helps prevent the tortilla from sticking too badly. You would do the same thing with lasagna as well. Okay, and then it is just a matter of layering everything up. Now, this is a pretty flexible meal that I made. So it's kind of nice because I did serve it on rice and it was very nice. The one thing to take into account is you probably don't want to mix it with the rice because you can see it's pretty soupy. But if you mix it with the rice, the rice sucks it all up and then you just end up with this solid mass of, yeah, it was pretty dry. Yeah, so I'm not sure how many chunks of chicken are in here, but it does need to get broken up. A little bit at least. So I'm just trying to break the chicken up and make sure I have enough in each layer, along with the beans. So I did stir that before, I gave it a shake before I opened it. And my oven is preheated. I'm going to put in a little corn. Got some Colby Jack here. It's just the last little bit, so I'm going to use that up. Some chunks, big chunks. One thing about freezing cheese. Hang on. There we go. Now, you can add sour cream to this, and there's a bunch of other things you could probably add as well, but we're just keeping it pretty simple. And that's pretty much it. Lather, rinse, repeat. So I'm just going to keep layering it up, keep breaking up the chunks of chicken, trying to distribute it evenly between the layers. And then I will get it in the oven for about an hour. I like to cover mine with some foil at the beginning, and then I take the foil off probably in the last 20 minutes of cooking, baking, whatever, just to give it some browning on the top. We do like to have the top nice and crispy, so let's see, break this up. And I will show you what this looks like. It's not a very appealing dish, mind you, because everything's just kind of layered and blopped together, but it tastes really good. So I highly recommend giving it a try if you do end up making this sort of chicken with the enchilada sauce in it. It's very nice. It's a pretty quick meal, comes together pretty quickly. Okay, everything else will get this Mexican blend cheese. I just put a little bit between each layer. If you do opt to make these chicken-based recipes from the new book of the all new book of ball canning, or whatever it's called, take into account that this book was actually published before the standard changed. So for raw packed chicken, you're supposed to leave 1.25 inches of headspace now. These required 1 inch, and I did find that I had quite a bit of siphoning, and I think some of that had to do with the headspace issue because of the new guidelines. So they've been finding that with raw packed chicken, the chicken expands more than they expect, and so they were, they updated the guidelines for that. This book has not been updated for those new guidelines, and so I found that I did end up with quite a bit of siphoning. So if you do find you've got some siphoning, it's probably because of that. I also would suggest that if you're making some of these chicken ones, that you try to use some of the dark meat. I find that the dark meat, like if you like the flavor, if you don't like the flavor, just, stick with chicken breast. My husband is a chicken breast fan, and that's all he likes. It's what he grew up with. I grew up with the dark meat, and so I don't really care. The chicken breast tends to have a drier texture than the dark meat, and so sometimes when you can it up, it even though it's moist, it tastes dry. So it's a really weird texture. So just something to be aware of when you are making any of these chicken-based recipes, that you may need to give more headspace because the guidelines haven't caught up. The book hasn't caught up to the guidelines pretty much because it's been published, and that you might want to think about what kind of meat you're using. That's pretty much it. I will get this in the oven and I will show you what it looks like when it comes out. So this is how it looks served on rice, and this is how it looks as the enchilada casserole. This turned out really nice both ways. So this is a very versatile dish. I highly recommend it. I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you found this video useful. There will be other links at the end of the video that you might enjoy, and I will see you next time on the Aerogarden Homestead.